Bonjour tout le monde, ça va bien?
Ça va bien.
Good, good. Thanks for being here. You won't be disappointed. We're having a truly great strategic planning process so far this fall. As I told our co-chairs a couple of weeks ago, I'm no longer worried about the process. The process is fine now. I'm worried about the output, what's going to come out of this. There's so many ways. There's so many pitfalls. There's so many ways not to get what we need in terms of a strategic plan. For a plan to really have an impact, it can't be generic. It needs to capture something truly unique about our great institution. It can't be boring, that's for sure. We need to have new language, vivid language that we'll live and that we'll want to use. And it can't be incremental. It can be, how about our strategic plan is to do a little bit more of the same? That's not going to work either. And that's particularly because of this last one that I wanted to have Sheldon Levy join us as part of this process. He makes this argument, I think, better than anyone in our sector because he's lived it. He's lived it transforming Ryerson University in Toronto in the process. So many of you will know that Sheldon was President and Vice Chancellor of Ryerson from 2005 to 2015, a 10-year tenure. So what Ryerson did with Maple Leaf Garden, with Sam the Record Man, the whole city builders ethos, the new student center, which is exceptional, of course the digital media zone and everything around entrepreneurship and innovation, and so many other great initiatives. That all happened during that 10 years, really transforming Ryerson. And as I think Sheldon will tell you, is that it is just as important to leverage these stories, to tell your story differently, powerfully, engagingly, to bring about the step function in your institution's visibility and reputation, which is something that we have to work on. How do we tell our story powerfully so that people talk about Carleton? So many of you will know that after Ryerson, Sheldon served as Ontario's Deputy Minister of Advanced Education and Skills Development, where he helped to prioritize innovation and entrepreneurship throughout the system. We were talking about this just before. Still some work to do in that area. In 2017, Sheldon became CEO of Next Canada, the Next 36, Next Canada, an organization that provides mentorship, education, networks, and funding to Canada's most enterprising entrepreneurs. Before then, being appointed the Special Advisor to Canada's Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion on the issue of scaling up small and medium-sized businesses. So earlier in his career, and it's been a truly outstanding career, Sheldon served at many other institutions, Sheridan College, Ontario Tech, the University of Toronto, and York University. So I'm really thrilled, Sheldon, to have you with us today. I'm sure you'll contribute a tremendous amount to our process, so much knowledge and experience to share as we prepare to write the next chapter. So I'll stop here. Please help me welcoming to the podium our guest, Sheldon Levy.
Well, first of all, it's fun to be here. I think that you get to a certain age and by age, you've done so many things and you become like the elder in like an Indigenous community. And so what I wanted to do is to share with you a bit of a perspective first of my time in government as Deputy Minister, and then to share with you the experience at Ryerson during my time. The reason I wanted to do the issues with the government of Ontario is that when you're in the government, the bureaucracy has a whole lot of issues and that's not only in higher education, it will be in education, it will be in health, and they will have been working on policies or alternatives, and it is the government of the day that will choose which one of all of them that they want to be able to look at. And the reason I say that is that what I'm going to show you is predictive of the future, because these are the same issues that every government is going to look at. How they deal with them will depend upon the government, which one they will. but it's really important for you to have an appreciation for what the government sees. So let me begin by saying that I'm going to do it in how the government is now seeing the economy and how the government is seeing us. And then I want to talk about the two issues that dominate a big part of the discussion: demographics and international students. So I'll take them in part, and I'll try to put them in such a way that they tell a consistent story. Then from there, I'm going to go into the Ryerson issue and show how it reflects back to the government. So the big thing that is happening in the world, this isn't a big surprise, it's happening in Canada, it's happening everywhere, is how quickly the economy has become a tech economy. As the president said, I spent 6 months with the federal government on the same issue. Now, what's interesting in it is not only how dramatically it's moved, but it's to reflect upon the following. In 1975, if you asked how much of the economy was what is called intangibles, that's knowledge base, intellectual property, brand, number of employees, back in 1975, it made up about 15% of the economy. Today, it's about 85%. So one of the challenges everyone has, doesn't matter if it's government or universities, is have we as an institution or as we, a government with its policies, kept up with the dramatic change in the nature of the economy? So just as one small example, way back, the economy was a resource economy by and large. And if you went up to Sudbury and you didn't take the nickel out, or you had a problem taking the nickel out, the nickel did not move. It stayed there. And then when we finally got to it, probably when we took it out, it was worth more. Now, if you have an economy of a company that is a knowledge-based economy, and the economy and the government is slow, then in a click of a keystroke, it's in another country. And have we in our policies recognized that speed? Have we as universities and colleges recognized this transformation? And what is also happening, it is in every single sector. And one of the things that I have to emphasize is when you used to talk tech in 1972, people say, oh, you're talking about computer science and engineering. It's no longer the case. It's across every program, tech. And in fact, in the work I did for the federal government, the biggest gap in tech was in marketing and sales. We think sales is, oh, that must be a used car salesman. Oh my God, that is 1972. But the biggest gap in growing businesses is tech sales, understanding how you communicate to people with technology in the new world. And you might ask yourself, I wonder how many programs does the universities have that are in the marketing side on tech that students see as hugely important and as good as engineering? I don't know. I'd hypothesize fewer than we need. The other thing that is forever driving the economy is the difference in productivity. But the best way I describe this is that the difference between the blue and the red line is really the equivalent of whose standard of living is changing. And the interesting part about the index of productivity, and I was saying this to the president as well, or to others, is that if you listen to government, the government is talking always, oh, well, success in jobs, jobs, jobs. I can tell you, if you are talking about jobs in the technology sector, more jobs, the only way they're getting more jobs is taking the jobs from someone else and moving them there. There isn't enough people for the jobs that are needed. So this language, people without jobs and jobs without people, is a real issue in the country. So if you say, let's bring Amazon in, and maybe it's a good thing, but I could tell you from the tech world, they think this is a horrible thing because they don't have the talent now and all of a sudden you'll bring in a giant that competes and takes all the talent that they presently don't have. I help a company in downtown Toronto that is supposed to have a complement of 140 people. It has just under 100. If you go there and you find an employee that will last 4 months, they will give you $4,000. This is very, very typical of the sector. So what does that mean? It comes down to this, and I'm not going to read the words, but take a look at the red line. That's us. And what it says is that the only way the economy is going to work is because of us. It is a knowledge-based economy. The colleges are important, but nowhere near as important as the universities. So how does this relate? The government, and it doesn't matter what color, is saying, oh my God, if our universities aren't performing at a level for our economy, we are really in trouble. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is, my goodness, are you important? The bad news is, the government knows you're important and wonders what you're doing about it. And a lot of that, those pictures, will be driving the government. And one thing I will say is the worst person to drive you is government. The best thing you can do is drive yourself. When the government has to do the driving, it is incredibly clumsy and normally gets into big accidents. You didn't have a faculty of education, am I correct? Have I got that right? Just imagine the crisis in education that the other universities had when the government kept on saying, you know, we have like 40,000 additional people that have got teacher education and there's no jobs for them. What are you doing? And they were saying that year after year after year after year. And the university was saying something like, well, that's academic freedom. Could you get out of my face? And the government says, then what happens? And I know this for a fact. Someone way down in the organization, someone says, well, I have an idea. Approve. And then they said, well, we'll just cut it in half. But what they also did is that they forgot that some of the universities the proportions were huge, like in Lakehead or Nipissing, and it killed the university. But then the government said, oh, by the way, on top of it, we're funding them too much anyways. But if the universities would have grabbed the issue, it could have been a much, much better solution for everyone, and in particular the students who are now running across to Niagara in Buffalo and doing it. My point is in your strategic plan, keep in mind the government is begging for you to be part of this solution. Let me go to universities and colleges. So, don't blame the messenger. This is what the government hears. That undergraduate education is too often a third priority, and I'm not speaking at Carleton, I'm not speaking of any particular university. This is the themes. That we should be doing more experiential learning, that there should be greater preparation for students for the jobs of the future, and a big issue on faculty renewal. Those things, you couldn't be in the deputy's office a week without those becoming recurring themes. Now, remember, the government of the day is going to be presented by policy options by the bureaucrats to deal with each of these items. So, not surprising, we heard stuff on faculty renewal, right? Those issues were exactly the same issues that we were dealing with the Wynne government. So let me go to demographics. This is fascinating stuff. Now, remember, the government of Ontario is Ontario. So what does this say in a nutshell? It says that in terms of domestic students, Canadian landed students, the numbers are going down for the next few years. They will pick up. The GTA will be fine. Outside the GTA, yeah, okay. But what are we going to do about the North? The North is not recovering demographically. So what does the government of the day do? Well, I was the government of the day. Big surprise, corridors. What was corridors? Corridors was to stop Ryerson, let me use Ryerson, from continuing to grow. Why? Because you had to create a flow of students outside the GTA. So you'd say, well, don't you want to be student friendly as well? Are you student centric or are you university centric? And I'll tell you, we're unsure of what's driving it. But corridors was absolutely created because the demographics were a problem, and the North is running out of students. And if you think it's bad in universities, it's doubly bad in colleges. And those numbers at the bottom just indicate how many universities had negative enrollment, negative domestic and landed immigrant enrollment over the period of time. So we're actually hoping that a few universities would actually decide to decline in enrollments and keep their money. No one did that. It was interesting. Everyone had that choice, but no one did it in the whole system. So this report is soon to be published, but I emphasize this is the role that government is hoping institutions will stand up to. And it is really to create help the economy of the future by creating the jobs for students. And I'm going to again emphasize, it's not only in engineering, math, statistics, it's the jobs of the new economy. And when I was at Queen's once, and I put this up, a student said to me, I always had my passion to do a PhD in English. I said, I hope your passion never dwindles. There's no one is saying that a student who wants to have a passion in Chaucer or in English or in any discipline. But at the same time, that ambition is not too far off what most of 99% of the students want. They want good careers as well. But you get attacked by thinking everything must be engineering or math, or everything must be. That's not what this is saying. It's saying there has to be greater alignment. So let me go to what I think is now a big issue, and I would say a worrying issue, and that is the number of international students that are now coming into Ontario. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when all of the institution's problems are being solved by international students, in other words, the money from international students, and you are using it for what you could call base expenditures, and if there's ever a hiccup in international students, it's a problem. And so the numbers when I was there were already high, and the government when I was there was really worried that they're too high. And they were looking at the California model that limited it to 17% in the California, or 18%, I can't remember exactly. And this government has a different position. It's well, we cut the tuition, we don't have grants. Go hog wild on international. So, is it sustainable? I'm not making comments about any institution, but take a look at the increase. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, it's a little off, but the increases in the college system, if you read the Toronto Star, is about double, but you could see the size numbers on it. To give you an idea of the volumes of it, you could see that Carleton is almost exactly, when I was there, the average of the system, almost exactly. But I've been at many of these institutions that their ambition is to be where they used to be at 15% to be 25%. But take a look at some of these numbers, the percentage of students. So at one university, well, I'll say at all universities, but there might be exceptions. The other problem is I'd call it the diversity of students from what geography, and when those students come in, what disciplines are they interested in? So if you have 80% from China, and of that 80%, 90% want to be in certain disciplines, then all of a sudden the faculty members, the students, everyone says, okay, 13 might be okay or 20 might be okay, but they not 20 across the board. It's 90 over there or 80 over there. So this is a growing issue. And if you want a statistic that I am very confident in, is that the economy of Ontario from international students is now bigger than from the auto industry. Just to give you some idea. Now, here's another one for you. Let me use Ryerson, okay? I'm at Ryerson. Our faculty members want to have the same level of compensation, the same level of opportunity as the U of T. We're in the same city, blah, 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 all of that. Well, right at the moment, U of T today has over $1 billion of international income. How am I going to compete with $1 billion? And by the way, U of T having $1 billion of income and security is a heck of a lot different than Ryerson having the proportion and being worried about diversity. So on one hand, why can't President Levy, why can't you do everything that U of T, they must be better than you, blah, 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 all of that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't compete. I couldn't compete financially with them before. Forget about endowments. Now you want me to compete and they have $1 billion in international income? Ain't no way. So the reason I say this is your pressures will always be comparative, right? So you'll compare. I want to be like this person. Why can't I be like this? Then you'll say, new topic. Oh, President, we can't be crazy at 25 or 40% international because it will be 90% and you're ruining our education. You say, well, hold on. You want to be like them over here. You want to cherry pick the ones you want to be like, but you don't want to be like them there. That's the problem of being a president. You own it. You own that problem. And by the way, I don't think faculty or students should argue differently, by the way. I think that's their responsibility. What I'm telling you really is that's why you can't, the president's job in strategic planning is how do you balance these things? It doesn't mean that there's any illegitimacy in wanting and arguing. That's your role. But the strategic plan has got to come together with a meaningful compromise between competing objectives. And that's where the challenge becomes. To write a strategic plan that makes everyone happy, I could tell you, what shelf do you want that one to be on? It's a way of coming to terms with stretching yourself but not breaking yourself. So I'm going to now go on to strategic planning, and in my view, and this is now Ryerson, totally my view, is that ultimately what is a strategic plan? It is to improve the reputation of the institution. And I think that's the job. And the reason I think that's the job is the way I have phrased it is this. If I could use Ryerson again. A student that graduated from Ryerson in 2000, is now going for a job in 2019. That student puts down a Ryerson transcript, a student puts down a Carleton transcript, and a person puts down a Waterloo transcript. Does the employer think, oh, what was Ryerson like in 1995? The employer looks and thinks about the institution of today. And so what I delivered to the students, my alumni, who are my shareholders, if you like, the students have given me, forget about the money, they have given me their 5 years or something of their life, right? Not the tuition. They have trusted me with their future. So I had to deliver a return to them. And the only return that you can deliver to them is a reputation of the institution such that their transcript is going to always become better. So you want a strategic plan that when your alumni read it, say, oh my God, this is exciting. You succeed like that, I will be able to compete with anyone for the promotion to be the vice president or the deputy minister or whatever. That's why I think it's about reputation. And I would gauge everything about, does this improve my reputation or does it not? And if you said I could make a lot of money and I didn't think it would improve my reputation, I say not doing it. But if you said, well, I could improve your reputation, we'll spend a lot of money and you'll go into debt, I said that doesn't improve my reputation either. But I'm going to say I was reputation driven. And so this story now, I'm going to have to admit, goes the following. It appears that I knew all the steps I was going to take. Not true. What it was after I took the steps, I looked backwards and said, so how did I get here? And that's a bit of strategic planning as well. You set out basic ideas and courses, but all of a sudden, a stone might appear that gets you to be able to step on it to get further, and you didn't know it was there. You can't be locked into exactly what path, but you have to know generally where in the hell are you going, right? So I thought that the way I figured this out retroactively was that it's a clear link with the mission of the mission statement of the university. In other words, its value was driven by the values of the institution. That it's grounded in the culture. I'm going to get into this more. It's bold and clear. It's a stretch, but believable. And the one that I lucked into, it's a strategy bigger than the university. Okay, so I'm going to go into each of these. So if you go back to my installation speech, this was the topic of my installation speech. It goes all the way back into the 1890s. Make no little plan, they have no magic to stir the blood and will likely not be realized. Make big plans, aim high, and hope and work. And I can tell you, it's exactly what I believe. If you do small stuff, no one cares, right? No one gives two hoots about small stuff, and it ain't likely to happen. It's when you do the big thing and people get stirred. They say, oh my God. So I always got to tell stories. Know Sam the Record Man? Okay. So, famous thing. I'm sitting on Yonge Street one day. I called the newspaper and I pointed to the building. I said, I'm going to buy that. And that's going to be our front door. Had no permission from the board, had no permission from the Senate. I told no one, okay? Zero. It's front page of the Sun. And I sat back and I was going to watch. And you know what happened? Everyone in the university walked taller. Well, that's my president. You create a sense of pride and confidence. And your neighbor says, is your president really going to do that? Yeah, that's my president. You got to have a plan that the president has the ability to point to Sam's. And you can't have a Senate or a board think, oh no, we need 75 permissions, 740 committees. That's not a plan. That's a bunch of garbage. That's process. That's how you create curriculum. It's not how you create dreams, right? And so how was I to pull this off? Ultimately, and I was saying this to Benoit, why did I pull it off? People trusted me. It was simply as that. I'm sure they said, what is he doing? They probably said, I don't know, but we trust him. And that has to be so much embedded into what you do to succeed in the plan. And it does not mean that you're not going to have your skirmishes and you're going to have your union issues and the union is going to be met. That's not that. That's life. And no one should expect life to be any different than life. But at the end of the day, it's trust. So here were the two things I had, distinctive but not odd. And the reason that came about was that Ryerson was particularly worried that if it was too different, that people would say, well, that's weird. I don't know who they are. They're sure not a university. So we had to be very, very careful about maintaining the values of a great university, which is the great teaching, the great scholarship of its faculty, its importance of research and inquiry, while you were being different. It was an important balance between the two. So I came up with, you got to be something that, the best at something that matters. Create your own category like Waterloo did with co-op, but you had to be distinctive in it, but not odd. And then the second part of it was city building. So these two themes drove everything. So let me just do a bit of distinctive but not odd. This was what we tried to do. We will be regarded as being the leader among Canadian universities in innovation and entrepreneurship, and Toronto will be the center. Noticed in this that I was bigger than just me. I was also talking about our city in this. Now, when I started this, no one was in innovation by creating incubators and accelerators. You could imagine how worried people were. Are you so odd, that different, that you're now odd? Right? It was like, oh my God, are we doing it right? Right? But at the end of it, it worked, and I will show you a bit more on this. City building. City building became huge important. But I have to tell you how it came about. How many people remember about 12 years ago a story about a locker room on Yonge Street? There was a murder across the road from Ryerson. And I was in my first year, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, if they say someone was murdered at Ryerson, this is a huge problem, right? And they didn't. I was very lucky. Then I started to wonder, what in the world does other universities do about this? And a friend of mine was the provost at Penn State. And I went down, and it turned out that Penn State took the initiative that they had that problem in spades. We can't wait for the city to rebuild around us. We're taking that responsibility. So I said, I'll learn. And another part of it is, you don't know everything. Other people have done great things. Borrow them, right? Borrow great ideas that pertain to you. And so we became the city builder in this. And so the moment that this was really fascinating to me, it was all backwards. I never planned it. But the moment that we became strategically interested in something bigger than ourselves, everything became much easier. Resources became easier. Applications for permits, neighbors, everything became easier, because up until then, it was like, we're here, we're gonna hold it to ourselves, and it's all about us. The moment it became about all of us, it became easy. Now go back to my other graph that said, take a look what the government is asking you to do. And if you could make it about all of us, which is all of Canada, this gets really exciting. So let me show you, this is Penn State. This is so instructive. That on the left-hand side is an alleyway that has nothing to do with Penn. It's close to Penn. On the right-hand side is what Penn did. Penn used their own money to be able to take the left to the right. And now you're thinking, what does that have to do with me? Well, maybe you spark the resources to do something great before other people give you the money to do it. You take the gamble that if I build my own walkway and change the walkway from the left to the right, that great things will happen. I will take that risk. I'm not going to wait to say, I'm not going to do great things unless you give me the money. I'll tell you, government will say, oh my God, really? Right? The other thing we did was that if you went to Ryerson before that, you wouldn't want to walk through it. We made it beautiful, and we made it beautiful for everyone. We purposely built it for the neighbors. You say, well, that was nice of you. Well, I got density with no problem. Density at $110 a foot. If you look at a tower that is built on Ryerson, you do the arithmetic, it was a good deal. But I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Now, here's a fantastic story. So maybe many of you know this site where Best Buy and Canadian, our business school is above that, called the Ted Rogers School of Management. So I'll give you a question that comes from the University of Chicago that pertains to this. University of Chicago built a building that won all the awards, architectural awards. Was on time, on budget, the students loved it, the faculty loved it, and it was a disaster. So how in the world does a building built on time, on budget, everyone loved it in the university, become a disaster? The answer is it didn't work for Chicago. So who is on the main street of this building? Not Ryerson. The city is on the main street of this building. Does that mean that it's active? Absolutely, it's active. If the university had built on it, it would have been dark and unsafe most of the time. And that's when you begin to see yourself bigger than who you are. And you will find analogies where you say, yeah, it would work for us, but it could work better for someone else. So let's go into second place because it will put us in first place. And that's the analogy here. We could have built on the ground level, but we said, no, the ground level is owned by the city and its citizens, and we wanted to keep it safe. And those analogies will appear in your plan. And my advice is to think that being in second sometimes will put you in first when you think bigger than yourself. Now, who doesn't know Maple Leaf Gardens, right? This is a gem. I could tell you the story on this that even to this day I think I took too much risk. But literally, I built this with no money, believing that if I did, everyone would come on board. But I could not get people on board to begin with. And everyone just trusted I could do it. And I could tell you the pressure that trust puts on you is huge. So I almost wanted to say, please don't trust me, because trust requires delivery on the trust. If you trust someone, boy, it puts a lot of pressure to deliver on that trust. Now, everyone will say, yep, most important things is results. I say, okay, except communications. And if there's one thing that universities do horribly, it's tell their story. And by the way, I don't know, President, how you're structured, and I'll get myself in problem. I was communications. Communications was publications. I was the communicator. I saw the story, and I said, I would phone up the Star. I literally took communications as my job. In fact, I defined my job as communications and chief marketing officer. That's who I saw my job as doing. So, results, DMZ, after my time, became the #1 incubator in the world at a university level. Remember, our dream was to stretch to be the best in Canada. We didn't stretch far enough. And to my successors, which I love, the roots were there, and it took off. This was done after I left. You know this? Well, like really, Ryerson was now regarded that high as the best university. Look at those rankings. Where were they 10 years ago? How does that help my alumni? How does it help the university? This is reputation. And if your ambition isn't to be able to have a reputation, I don't know what you're doing. Now, Communication is critical. It is everyone's job, and most certainly job number one for leadership team. And you need the elevator pitch. Everyone has to have not the same story, but you have to say, you know what we're doing at Carleton? These are the 3 things that we're aiming to do. And people, oh my God, really? Hey, this is exciting, right? And you got to give examples for the pitch to become alive. You can't just say it. You got to say, and by the way, did you know that faculty member, blah, 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 or a student that we just graduated in philosophy has done ABC? And then you have to, that story lasts 1 week, refresh the story, have story after story that gives life to the pitch. So you're always updating it. And the number one thing is never lose momentum. So literally, honest to God, I would come into my office and I would say to my staff, we're not on the front page of the Star. I haven't seen us for a long time. I'm getting nervous. And I was thinking, what? And I knew the Star was a human interest star. What human interest story is exciting that might be able to get us on the front page of the Star? And I would deliberately say that I had to fill the void of information by good information. I couldn't sit back. So I don't know if you remember a great story of the Maasai coming for graduation, and it was front page story. It had nothing to do with technology. It had zero to do. It had to do with good stuff happening at the university that was consistent with our values and that. And then when that came in, we said, and by the way, the woman who graduates in the DMZ, right? But I can't emphasize enough the importance of information. And this room alone, probably repeat it, I was in a great fortunate position because my competitor universities were doing nothing. If you look at what universities call communications, I call them firefighting and publications. Oh, we have a problem. That's communication. How do we deal? How many people are going out and creating the story? So let me give examples. This is a phenomenal example of it. I'm literally listening to the Super Bowl game, and I see flashing in the commercial something that looked like it came out of DMZ, right? I thought, well, what was that? I'd say 1,000 people would have said, what was that? Maybe found out and said, oh, that's interesting. I found out. I said, well, front page. We're making a big deal about this, that one of our students' technologies made it to the Super Bowl. Very few people do that. See opportunity for communications of good stories. Another one, we opened up an incubator in Mumbai, India. And not only did we have the Governor General open it, but take a look at the headlines of the top newspaper in India. Now, does that help you with recruitment? I think so, especially when in India, they are very much on the Times 100 list. When I started off, I had a friend that says, oh, don't even bother trying to go to the IITs. By the time I left, we recruited from the IITs. Why? Reputation. And what is fascinating about it, if you become the best at something that matters, it is a halo over the whole institution that allows everyone to succeed. So I think, I won't name the institution, but there's some institutions that say, oh, well, if we got to be the best at this, then you got to be the best at that, and you got to be the best at that. And ultimately, you're best at nothing. So you got to believe that being the best at something that matters is an important element for the whole institution. But then you would ask, matters to who? And my answer is matters to the students and the society you serve. Not to your discipline or your research. It's a broader responsibility. So this is a good example. Be proud. be saying, we want to be on the top of fold. Top of fold is the top of the front page of the newspaper on the side that comes to your door that you read first, right? You want to be there. So here's my lessons learned. Leadership really does matter, and trust. Oh, this is huge. I can assure you 100%, if you took all the rules of Carleton that are encoded in every type of agreement, every type of policy, it probably says don't do anything. And it might say, well, you could try, but you won't be successful, right? This is huge. You have to remove the book that says you cannot do it. And honest to God, I can tell you, it exists. You'll have all this momentum, and then you'll get down to this level here. And these are wonderful people. I don't mean anything negative, but they'll say, oh, you can't. We have 3 RFP proposals. We have a purchase order requirement. We have 3 deans. We got 5 shirks. We got no, you can't do it. You will never, ever be able to be successful unless you're determined to end. The way I used to do it, I would say, well, that policy we're going to change, and I will take accountability for it. And if it was a Senate policy, I'd talk to Senate about giving freedom to it. If it was a board policy, I'd say to the board, we're changing this for this reason there. Sometimes we would try it. So I never took authority that I didn't have, but I never allowed the no to stop me. And most often the no was really, it turned out 90% of the time, it was our interpretation of no. It really, if you looked at the policies carefully, it said, well, if you want to do it, then you have to do it this way. So if you want a great one, look at the RFP policy of the government of Ontario. It says, here's all the requirement, and it goes down and 400, and then the last line says, but if you don't want to do it this way, just make sure you're transparent. But how many people stop around page 5? It's not necessary. It just says be transparent and open. Here's how we suggest you be, but it wasn't a requirement. And so you have to be able to challenge yourself on this. And this is, there's never a right, you can't do it this year, well, because tuition's being rolled back. But, next year will be something else. Next year, it's always a reason not to do it. There's no better time than now. This one, I think, is the fun one. It's more fun when people say it's impossible to make the impossible possible. If your strategic plan is, well, that's obvious, and the possible is possible, then yawn. It's well, I don't know. It's like, well, that's scary. Am I really going to step? Are we going to try? And you make the impossible possible. So go big or go home. I said this one really matters, but small things matter. And the small things matter are the following. It's that while you're doing big things, this is the way I said it at Ryerson. The toilets need to be clean. The washrooms need to be clean. The hallways need to be clean. You need to be able to have that thank you note to the individual. If all you're going to do is say, I'm going to do all the big things, but people say, well, you wanted to conquer all that, and you can't even clean the floor? And my offices haven't been cleaned for 12 years, and now you're telling me you're going to do all of these big things? Small things matter. And I would say the small things matter close to the people that are with you. And so the thank you note, the hallway, the extra cleaning on the hallway, the campus being cleaned, the snow being shoveled, all of those things are critical to give the legitimacy for the big idea. And then my last one is, as I said to the president, when I was president, I had the best, I couldn't imagine a better job in the world as president of a university. And Was it always the rosiest day? I could tell you if you did a couple of Google searches, you'll say he didn't have a good day that day. But they are the best jobs. They are a privilege. And who gets to be able to talk to such a group of wonderful people like you on a regular basis? So that's why I'm saying if you don't have fun, you got the wrong job. But everyone should have fun doing it. And everyone should feel excited about the journey you will do together. And just remember, it's all about the students at the end of the day. So thank you.